Hi, Priyanka.
Hi, Aisha. How are you?
I was really impressed by your research, which is in science communication, your PhD research work, which is combining arts and sciences. So, your work is really novel and very interesting, and it would be really helpful for students um, to know your journey. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. So, just a very quick background about myself. I am from Calcutta, India, and I have studied bachelor's in fine arts where I've specialized in sculpture. So it was like 4 years of doing different kinds of materials, clay, ceramics, wood carving, stone carving, etc. Thereafter, I've done my master's in Germany in fine arts, but it was like very conceptual, where anything can be art. So even playing card games can be considered an art project. Um, and after that, I came to Melbourne in 2020 to do my PhD in arts, especially looking at storytelling practices in India, which were dying out, and how do you revive them. So it's been a very visual art journey, but somehow, somewhere in all this time, science came in a very strange manner. Okay, so it's called Man and Master, and I actually made cards, playing cards, so taking up the various characteristics that define each of the planet or each of the zodiac. I have created these kind of cards. So here, for example, the blue, green, and the yellow cards are for astrologers, and the pink cards are for the neuroscientists. And I actually got a neuroscientist and an astrologer to sit and play a game of cards. So this was in Calcutta in a auditorium. That was like my first foray into anything about sciences. And then slowly I kept up with reading about neuroscience. So it was through science communication journals and, you know, and then I think there was the neuroscience groups on Facebook that I could join.
They just should make sure that these are authentic groups.
Exactly. Yeah. So you will generally have, I mean, the people who are posting in these groups are academics themselves, and they are, the post itself is linked to the actual journal, which may be from, I think, Science Mission, from Nature, um, neurosciencenews.org and stuff like that. Yeah. By reading these journal articles in neuroscience, I then slowly came to know about gut-brain axis, which is which states that basically we have microbes in our intestine, and they send signals via the vagus nerve in our spinal cord to our brain, and they can affect our moods and behaviors. And there are literally as many microbial cells as there are human cells, so which kind of literally makes you think like there is another person inside your body. So that is how then I got introduced to microbiology, and I came to know about all the kinds of microbes that there are in the world, in our body, outside our body, inside our body, all of that. And so then I developed this other kind of work, which I'll just share my screen and show you. Um, so this is the gut brain axis, and it would make me think, like everything that I'm doing, all the food that I'm eating actually is first digested by the microbes, and then it goes on to become nutrients for my body. So even if I'm peeling a fruit, and the juices are all over my hands, what is happening to the microbes in the hand? Are they eating that juice as nutrition and stuff like that? So this, for example, is a map of the microbiome. So all the various kinds of bacteria that are present on the different parts of our body. And so taking this as a kind of idea, and I was very much interested in Indian miniatures at the same time. So I had big collage on my home studio where I just had images of Indian miniatures and science illustrations all collaged together. So somehow when I'd just be passing by, I would see all these images together. And I was just hoping somehow they would fuse in my brain. And what happened was, So this is an Indian miniature. This is a screenshot of this neuroscience group, which I am part of. And I come to see these kind of images all the time. And so the two images somehow have fused and become this kind of illustration. And in these illustrations, so in these illustrations, so in Indian miniatures, here, for example, you have a small verse which is written, and these are called Bara Masa miniatures, and it is about the Bara Masa, the 12 months of the year. So what are the things that happen in the 12 months? The flora, fauna, vegetation, climate, activities. So, for example, this is about mid-October to mid-November, which is the time of Diwali. So here you have a lot of oil lamps, and you have the vegetation, you have people praying, worshipping, you have people playing chess and playing cards that we do on Diwali. So these were kind of like absolutely holistic seasonal portraits. And what I have done is something similar. I have written short verses about everything that I'm eating, I'm doing, and it's kind of like, so for example, if I'm eating a carrot, I've written mustardy carrots bathed in bubbling brine, soak the sun in my stead and father new neurons in my head. The neurons sparkle fireworks of dopamine and oxytocin when smooth bed sheets churn ferocious waves that smash the pillow boards. So it's like thinking about if I've just eaten a carrot, and the carrot has got vitamins and proteins, and that is supposed to create new neurons in my head, and those neurons will create more dopamine or more oxytocin and stuff like that. What happens in the body? So it's kind of imagining the journey of metabolites inside the body in a way. So taking the idea of these very miniature paintings are very detailed illustrations. And so that is how I've then created these kind of drawings where I have microbes, I have the various parts of the body that can be affected, and, imagining what is happening inside. So I'm very much fond of this motif called the phospholipid bilayer, this very ornamental, beautiful motif, which is kind of forms the layer of membranes of all the cells. So, but this is all basically like things that have come up through reading the various articles in a way. So I'm not from science background. The last time I studied science was in class 10. And somehow what I really like in science communication is that scientists also have to use everyday analogies, everyday metaphors to explain things to us. And that is how then the external world and the internal world gets connected,
First of all, I really would like to congratulate you. You have done an amazing job. I really like the painting that the sketch that you have created. Can you tell us which softwares did you use to make this?
So I think the software that is used to make the images by the scientists is also somewhere like Adobe Illustrator or Corel Draw. So obviously you have various kinds of science images. One is that is directly generated by equipment. So for example, you have the scanning electron microscope. So those are more like photographic images. Yeah. And the other are these kind of graphic images, which I think sometimes there are softwares. So for example, there is a professor in the US called David Goodsell, and he's created a software. It's called iCell, INCELL, where all the motifs are already present, all the visual elements are already present, and you just kind of, you just click on the visual motif and place it in the right place, and you can create images. I thought that the images, the style or the visual aesthetic quality of the images is very similar to what I can do on Adobe Illustrator. And so I have used Illustrator to create these. Yeah.
That's amazing. Really good. Another point I want to make here is you represent like today's generation very well, because coming from the arts background, and keep learning, and let your journey shift. You don't need to stick to one thing that you have decided 10 years ago. You learn new things and you can mold your career in this way. So a great learning process. You challenged yourself and learned a lot. So
Yeah,
that's
so I guess, I mean, the point of arts is anyways to keep representing the zeitgeist, the spirit of the contemporary time. I wrote a story about a cell of my stomach who is bored of its job of digesting food every day, and it wants to go to the brain to do something super interesting, creative. It wants to join another department in a way. And so it's basically trying to think about how to escape from the stomach and how to go up to the brain. So I used science images, just changed the style a bit to make it more artistic, but, kept the aesthetic of the biology diagrams that we have seen in our school textbooks. So this was in 2020. And so here, for example, this is the diagram of this foveolar columnar epithelial cell, and it has a vacuole of dissatisfaction. So it's kind of, just using humor to create. And so this is like a screenshot. So I only had my mobile to do the research. So this is like a diagram of the screenshot of stomach anatomy. So this is like the cell membrane or the plastic membrane of my smart cell phone. And I can see the image of the stomach inside that. And so this is like how it thinks it can actually just, the stomach cell can hook onto a red blood cell and, travel through the various veins and arteries. So this is like his escape plan of how it needs to go up through the lungs into the brain, etc., etc. And so this was just like, and in which part, if the brain is too big, so where does it need to actually go? So I'm very fascinated with the prefrontal cortex because that's where all the imagination happens and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, we need to be right here in front of the brain. That's where all the cool, artistic, imaginative stuff happens and stuff like that. So this was but the brain-blood barrier is a very hard border that you can't actually cross through. And so in this story, then what happens is the stomach cell cannot cross through the brain-blood barrier, and it has to return back to the stomach.
How did you get interested in what was your hobbies as a child that brought you towards this side?
So I grew up in a very interesting part in Calcutta where every child would be out on weekends, Saturday, Sunday. All the mothers would be escorting their children to these art and dance schools. So it was a neighborhood where, let's say, if people had a spare room, they would just let it out for 3-4 hours, where young students who were studying in art colleges, they wanted to make some money on the weekends. They would come and offer to teach in these classes.
These art schools and pools and things like that, weekend classes, were they heavily in Indian in a way, right? So Rabindranath Tagore is from Kolkata, and the music there is called Rabindra Sangeet. So is it with the painting and other stuff as well?
So, I mean, Rabindranath Tagore himself was a very eclectic person. He wrote poems, he wrote stage dance dramas. He drew and doodled as well. I shifted to Ravindra Bharati University, which is an art college, but there we learned about Western arts, Indian arts, Japanese arts, all forms of arts. And what an art college does is, in the art history lessons, we actually understand how society and time shapes the art practice of that era or of that area also. So, for example, when you have the Industrial Revolution and you have machines, you have steam power, you have the printing press, all these technologies bring new mediums into the art form as well. And that is when artists take up these art forms. So when, for example, the camcorder was invented, video art came up, for example. And, so you understand that the history of art is also the history of technology. So without technological inventions, a lot of the art practices will not be possible, right? So that is when actually the idea of what is art and, what is the global representation of art, how the global times are represented through our individual art practices. That sort of opened up for me. And that is when I became perceptive that, my individual life is connected to the bigger world outside. And what I do individually in my artistic practice can also be reflective of the spirit of what is happening in global art at the same time.
Very
Yeah.
well said.
Yeah.
Yes, it's related to you and your people around, and it only makes sense to make the relevant things in your life
Exactly.
or what you see around.
So, for example, this is also the time of, say, for example, social media, scrolling social media addiction. We are all guilty of, binge watching and, scrolling TikTok reels for hours without knowing, irrespective of which profession and how serious that profession is. We've all done it. And that is because these things are made in a way to be addictive, right? So there is a lot of discussion about dopamine right now, for example. And it is interesting that everybody, common people also know the word dopamine. So this brings me to my next and most recent practice. So, for example, in India, in Sanskrit literature, we have something called Ashtanayika, which is the basic representation of the various phases of love. And how do you portray it in drama, on stage? How does an actor show the various stages of love? And so you have certain miniature paintings, which I'll just show you. Um, so this is called the Ashtanayika. So you have the various phases. So when you are in love for the first time, you are excited, you get ready, you dress yourself, you ornament yourself. Then you are waiting anxiously. Why is the lover not coming? Why is he not coming? And then, you find out that he spent the night with somebody else. He's ditched you. He's gone to somebody else. So you are angry with the person. You tear your jewelry and your hair and you're like, what the hell? And then the person comes and asks for forgiveness, and you either forgive or you don't. Sometimes your lover is far away traveling and you can't do anything about it. And sometimes you are proactive and you don't wait for the lover to come. Instead, you go out and you go and meet the lover, right? So this person is called the Abhisarika. And I was very fascinated about this. So you have a lot of Indian miniature paintings which show this Abhisarika who is going out to meet her lover in the middle of the night. So she's not scared about that it is a dark, thunderstormy night. There are snakes in the forest. There are demons in the forest. It's dark. Anything can happen. Mortal fear, social fear. There can be gossip, any stuff. She is not scared. She's not bothered, but she goes out and meets her lover. And so I have taken this image and I have created a performance. Yeah.
Sorry, she seems to be a very strong woman. So where does this idea of this eight form of love come from? Because generally people feel that in the past women have been suppressed and we don't see very many strong women. So is it like ancient India idea?
So there is a book called Natya Shastra, which is basically the treatise on dramaturgy, everything related to stage arts, related to drama, which was written in 2nd century BC. Okay. Yeah, somewhere around that time. And this itself, so this 8 stages of love is actually said to be the observations of Vatsyayana, who is the author of Kama Sutra, which is also written a little bit earlier than that, I think. And Vatsyayana actually says, so there is a lot of misinterpretation about Indian erotic arts during colonization, where, Western or English translations have actually skewed all the things to suit the Victorian prudery in a way. And Vatsyayana himself says that he was commissioned by women to write this book. So all the observations he made about the various phases of love is actually said to be commissioned by women. And So that is where I thought, okay, let me look at it from contemporary neuroscience perspective. So I take this image, which is an Indian miniature painting, painted somewhere in say 15th to 18th century, and I made a performance where I looked at it from contemporary neuroscience. So I'll just share my screen. So then I created this kind of a set design where you have the trees of the forest and the Abhisarika is running. There are demons in the forest. She is not scared of the snakes and the demons in the forest also. And so what I've done is I've created this performance. So there were trees on this, and then the trees become like mirror neurons because the trees are hugging each other. In the wind, the two trees have come together and it seems like they're hugging each other. And maybe looking at those trees, she feels like she needs to hug her lover as well. And that's where the mirror neurons come in. We see something and we want to do it ourselves. So here, then, for example, towards the end, I actually talk about dopamine synthesis in the brain, and people understand it. I do it in a very simple language. I've done it in many public spaces, and people understand it. And I've had feedback where people have said, oh, wish science was taught to us like this in school. Yeah, as I think science communication is an amazing thing, because I mean, ultimately all scientists also somehow, they want to write a book in simple language and publish it for general people. This is Surf Excel, I think, or Tide or Ariel. Yeah, this is Ariel ka ad. And this is the first time, in Indian television we had Vicks, which kind of showed a microbe without calling it a microbe, right? So this was the Kitch Kitch monster in Vicks ka ad. So we are primed. We know more science than we actually think we do. And even commercial advertising is some form of science communication.
That also says a lot about the market. Like, if you are pursuing this career, you will be employed. You won't
Absolutely.
end up.
Absolutely. You can have a pop music festival of science communication. You have people who are, people who might understand it through music.
Yeah, like in Australia, we have science weeks. We have science in the pub. The whole knowledge has to go out of the university. It has to go towards the society, and you have to bridge them. So you have to open the doors and make it accessible to everyone. Priyanka, thank you so much for a wonderful discussion. And not only did you add arts to my STEM series and made it more holistic and
STEAM.
humanistic,
So now you have
but
STEAM.
Yes, now I have STEAM series, and but also you really shared your valuable insights on the topic as well, why your research and why science communication is increasingly being important for us in today's world. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Aesha. Lovely series. Great job. Because again, all of this needs to be done. So whatever is being done is also part of the zeitgeist, because it needs to be done. So it is being done. Wishing you all the best for your series. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.